Welcome back to the channel. Today I would like to continue sharing chapter 172. Hell Hostel, please listen. From then on, what can be done is to combine Lam Dong Mai's actions and mine to take a further step to determine. At the same time, everyone also realized that unless there were no ghosts, it would be impossible to use Lam Dong Mai's death or not as a standard to determine whether it was safe or not. After all, Lam Dong Mai was the main character. The main character's halo could not be applied to the household. At this time, continuing to read the following content, everyone frowned. Finding a safe place was really too difficult. I'll think about how to go on the last day. Tin then looked at the mobile phone screen, pointed at the last paragraph of the novel and said, "After all, it is the last paragraph of the novel. The author will most likely arrange a good ending. It is just that it is not clearly written." "You mean to go through the sacrificial square?" Lang Tri Tien also opened his mouth and said, "That place is a place where we can leave, but you also know it is very dangerous. We can find another route. Whether we can safely pass through the sacrificial square or not, there is absolutely no way to prove it. For now, we still have to make a bet. If we fail, tomorrow we will go find Lam Dong Mai again. Anyway, tomorrow it will be much more convenient to find her. If we find that lake we can see her, she just stopped by the lake for 4 hours. Like that, the possibility of finding her is also higher. Let's say it is like that. Are you really determined? I think we can try Tin Van's method." Everyone argued again, and finally reached a consensus. The sacrificial square was where Lan Dongmei brought Xinghui at the last moment to leave Hongyue town. The location was at the foot of the northeastern mountain. This place was mentioned at the end of the novel. To go to the sacrificial square, one could only follow Lan Dongmei's route. The route of Lan Dongmei's last day was still a bit vague in comparison. But if one followed the compass, one could still find it. Of course, whether or not they could reach the sacrificial square smoothly was still hard to say. One must know that Lan Dongmei being able to reach it smoothly did not mean that they could reach it smoothly. But now, there was obviously no other way. Let's go. In the end, everyone unanimously decided to go to the sacrificial square described in the last paragraph, and see if they could leave Mount Puxia. This was also a rehearsal for the final day. Holding the compass, they started to walk towards the edge of the forest. Each person was leaning on each other attentively, not daring to be a little far away. But no matter what the wind blew or the grass swayed, it scared them to the point of losing their souls. They kept moving towards the northeast. According to the original text of the novel, on the last day, Lan Dongmei set off from Hongyue town, carrying Xinghui, heading north. After reaching a mountain, they headed east. And in this process, naturally, there were many dangers. Therefore, no one dared to have a subjective mentality. I say, next. At this time, Qiu Fifan, who had always been left out among the 6 people, finally said a sentence. "Where are we going? Where are we going?" Lang Zhishan held the phone and said, "As you can see, we are heading towards the mountain in the north. That is near the sacrificial square. From that mountain, heading east, we can reach the sacrificial square. Moreover, this mountain is not bad. There is also a reference, which can prevent us from losing our way." Xing Shun looked at the content on the phone and said, "This path was discovered by Lan Dongmei, but the path is really arduous. We have no way to confirm Lan Dongmei's route. Fortunately, that mountain still has a reference. I only hope we can reach the place safely. Listen carefully." Lang Zhishan cleared his throat and said, "As long as there is one person who can leave Mount Puxia alive, tomorrow we must tell everyone about this. What we need right now is intelligence. Therefore, everyone set off again, heading north. On the last day, Lan Dongmei arrived in front of the sacrificial square. Everyone knew this point. Xing Shun held the phone, looking forward, occasionally looking at the mobile phone screen, his fingers moving extremely fast to push the novel content down. Lam Dongmei blew on her palm a few times. She knew clearly, time was very urgent now. If she were to die today, then it would be true death. She walked north from the square, leaving Hongyue town. For now on the way it was as if nothing had happened. But what would happen next, no one knew. Right now, based on the time calculation, it should be almost noon. However, the sky was still dark as before. There was only a Hongyue Hai in front of her eyes. Tin Hui still seemed very strong. Even though he was still young, He knew that he could not let his mother worry about him at this time. Tin Hui, I must take you away from this place. Lam Dongmai looked at her son, secretly making up her mind. She looked at the topographic map again. If she continued to go north, she would reach a mountain, called Bak Phong by the old men in Hong Noyet town. In front of her, there was only this path that she had not yet passed. After all, although this path could lead outside, the trees along the way were very dense, ghosts could easily hide. She took a lot of garlic from the kitchen, smeared it on herself, and Tin Hui heard that this had a restraining effect on blood-sucking ghosts, but right now she did not know if it was useful or not. Anyway, it was better than nothing. She did not know how far she had gone. Perhaps she had completely left the range of Hong Noyet town. Lam Dongmai held Tin Hui's hand tightly and entered a large dense forest ahead. The trees here were relatively dense, and at first glance, it looked very quiet and gloomy. But she didn't know if there was any other way around. Once she entered, she was afraid that she wouldn't know if she would live or die. This was the only option for her to pass through. The other paths were all blocked by ghosts. Lam Dongmai took a deep breath and said to Tin Hui, Tin Hui is a very brave child. As long as Mom is by your side, no one can hurt you. Mom will make you a lot of delicious food, let you stay in a comfortable room, and sleep well. So now, hold on a little longer and we will get home, okay? Xing Hui's face clearly showed some fear, and there was no way to hide it. But when he saw his mother's extremely haggard appearance, he could only nod his head lightly in the end. Finally, Lam Dongmai squatted down on the ground, hugged her son tightly, patted his shoulder and sobbed, Good boy, Tin Hui is so brave. After that, Lam Dongmai stood up, pulled Tin Hui and continued to walk deeper into the forest. At this moment, she had made up her mind. No matter who wanted to hurt her son, she would risk her life with him. As long as Tin Hui could safely leave this mountain, she could close her eyes and feel at ease. This child had endured too many storms these past few days. He was so young and had seen such horrible things. Seeing him so haggard made her heart ache. On the way, Lam Dongmai passed right in the middle of several trees, occasionally looking around, what could be hidden deep within those trees. Mom! Tin Hui suddenly called out, causing Dongmai's mind to tremble. She hurriedly looked towards her son, and asked, What's wrong? Me. Tin Hui's small hand covered her mouth and said, Damn, there are dead bones. Lam Dongmai looked over, and sure enough, under a large tree trunk, there were several roots protruding from the ground, and there were 3 skulls lying around. She quickly covered her son's eyes and pulled him back. This place was indeed very dangerous. However, she had no way back now. Going back would be equally dangerous. Today, she had to rush into danger, then she would have a chance to escape. Finally, she ran in another direction. The deeper she went, the denser the trees became, and the more panicked she felt. Although nothing had appeared yet, on the contrary, the more peaceful it was, the more terrifying it was. Just imagining what would happen next was enough to make her tremble with fear. In the past, if she were in a situation like this, she could still be reborn, but now it was no longer the same as before. Tin Hui, trust me. Lam Dongmai was very scared, but she always had to protect and comfort her son. Don't be afraid, no matter what happens, I will think of a way to protect Tin Hui. The lush foliage of the trees had already covered up a lot of that red moon. So the deeper we went, the darker it became. For someone like Lam Dongmai who didn't have a compass, it was really easy to lose direction in this place. But now that she had walked in for more than 10 minutes, nothing unusual had appeared, which made her feel a little at ease. But thinking about those 3 skulls, she immediately reminded herself that she absolutely could not be careless. Right at this moment, a strange sound rang out, as if it came from within her head, like the sound of a whistle constantly lingering around her. That sound was like some creature was crying, but also like the sound of a vortex flowing. That sound was really hard to describe. It was impossible to distinguish which direction the sound was coming from, because it seemed to be coming from all directions. What was that? Right after that, Lan Dongmei discovered that when she had just stopped, the sound had already gotten closer. This couldn't help but scare Lan Dongmei to the point that she continued to walk faster, her hand tightly holding Tin Hui's, her speed increasing more and more. However, that sound also began to expand rapidly, continuously getting closer to the mother and daughter. At this moment, Xing Hui suddenly raised his hand to cover his ears, crying loudly, "Mother, I'm scared. This sound is really scary. It's like it wants to eat us alive." "No, it won't, Xinghui." Lan Dongmei pulled Xinghui quickly towards the deeper part of the forest. The faster she walked, the faster her heart beat. That sound really felt like it was constantly getting closer. The sound was like an explosion, making both mother and daughter feel like there was a devil waiting right beside them. If they were careless, it would crawl into their heads. The sound began to change, becoming like a curse that seemed to want to break their eardrums, the kind of sound that became stronger and stronger, as if it wanted to crawl into people's minds and control them. No, 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 no. Lan Dongmei became more and more desperate. She even felt that she had no way to leave this forest. Turning around, it felt like there was a shadow chasing the mother and daughter. However, looking closely, there was no shadow, it was all just an illusion. But the sound became more and more piercing, as if someone was holding a trumpet close to the ear. It was like a curse, like the sound of metal colliding, or like an ancient spell that one could not explain, filled with malicious curses. Die, die. Although it was not exactly like that, but deep in the heart, it was exactly like that. This sound made the listener feel like they were hypnotized. Their movements began to slow down. Finally, the sound stopped. But Lam Dongmei and Tin Hui still felt like it was still ringing in their ears. For a long time but still not stopping, it made it difficult for others to forget. Lam Dongmei felt like all the energy in her body was drained away. But it was not over yet. The sound rang out again. At this moment, it was no longer coming from a distant place, but directly from behind her neck. Immediately, Lan Dongmei felt like the blood in her body was flowing backwards. She didn't dare to turn around at all. She wanted to continue to stand up and run. However, her legs were completely unable to move. That sound seemed to have drained all the strength from her body. She had now become like a puppet, unable to manipulate her body, wanting to walk, wanting to scream but couldn't. The sound came right from behind. Lan Dongmei felt like her head was split in two, causing the sound to directly pour into it. But she witnessed Tin Hui beside her, finally bursting out a force that quickly pulled her son forward, leaving that sound behind. The moment she read this part, everyone felt goosebumps all over their bodies. There was still no mention of the image of the demon, but just that was enough to make people imagine all sorts of things. If they kept going into the woods, they would definitely encounter this, which really made many people start to feel discouraged. But their conditions were better than Lan Dongmei's after all. She was already on her 7th day while they were only on their 3rd day. Moreover, the woods were very large. It was unlikely that they would encounter a situation like Lan Dongmei's. Even, everyone had prepared hearing aids in advance, but only God knew how useful they were. Everything could only rely on Lan Dongmei, but she was the main character in the story, and even on the 7th day, they didn't know if she was alive or dead. If they encountered the same situation as her, could they have a better ending than Lan Dongmei? Not knowing how much time had passed, a forest appeared before their eyes. Judging from the direction, it was probably the place where Lan Dongmei entered the woods. Everyone was very restless in their hearts. Hopefully, we can use all our abilities to let more survivors find the sacrificial square where Lan Dongmei passed through, and then leave Mount Puxia. The spirit stood in front, his face fearless as he said, "For survival. Let's go. For survival." This seemed to have become a slogan. Everyone also quickly walked into the woods. Although they were afraid, they still had a chance to be reborn. Thinking of those who had truly died in the blood temples, they considered themselves very lucky. How could they have the right to complain anymore? But as soon as they started walking into the woods, everyone's bodies seemed to stiffen completely. Only to see under a large tree trunk, there were 3 cold skulls lying there. This is. 3 white skulls were piled up under the tree. At first glance it was clear that they had died many years ago. Everyone who saw the skulls immediately determined that this was where Lan Dongmei and Xinghui went on their last day. Hey, get through. Lin Xuehua spoke first. You guys should know how dangerous this is, right? At that time, Lan Dongmei herself had not gone far before entering the woods, and then she. Let's get through. Try our best to get a little further and enter the woods. I also agree. Qiu Feifan, who was not noticed by anyone, also immediately spoke up to support Lin Xuehua. Too close, we have the possibility of encountering similar things. Understood. Xing Shun also did not say any words of objection. He looked towards the woods beside him, immediately moved his footwork. The others quickly followed Xing Shun, not daring to fall behind at all. At present, everyone unconsciously had taken Xing Shun as the leader. After all, this man revealed the most calm and natural appearance among the group. Considering Lang Jishan, although he was a policeman, it was still his first time executing the blood order, plus he was killed twice. Now walking on the road his 2 legs were still trembling nonstop. The only one who did not change was only Xing Shun. Increasing the number of times he executed the blood order, in their hearts everyone also relatively approved. Moreover, most importantly, he was the person most familiar with the plot content. The others didn't have the time to read the novel without missing any details. Therefore, Xing Shun was the one who knew the content the best. After walking a few hundred meters, the group entered the woods again. Because the temporary destination was the north wind, so even if they deviated a little, it wouldn't be a big deal. They only hoped that in this position, they wouldn't encounter the same situation as Lan Dongmei. But after walking less than 20 meters, Lin Shuihua couldn't walk anymore. The novel's content had too much of an impact on her, making her still remember the ghostly sound that almost made Lan Dongmei collapse. Because she couldn't actually hear it, she only saw the description. Instead, her imagination kept expanding, and in the end, just thinking about it made people scared. After all, not knowing was the biggest terror. Let's change to another place? Lin Shuihua kept retreating. Her face became more and more unsightly, speaking incoherently. This place is too dangerous. If we continue to talk, we will die. There is no absolutely safe place here. Xing Shun looked towards Lin Shuihua and continued, or you pray to the Lord of the Holy Sun to bless you. Aren't you a believer in the Holy Sun religion? Maybe you pray once, and you will have a transcendent body, immortal and indestructible. I also feel that continuing forward is not too appropriate. Qiu Fifan at this time also wanted to retreat. I say, or let's stop. As for the others, on the contrary, there was no special reaction. It's up to you. Xing Shun looked at Qiu Fifan and Lin Shuihua standing together, and said, I also don't force you. If you want to go another way, then it's up to you. Hey! Lang Jishan heard Xing Shun say these words, and quickly spoke up to stop. How can you say that? I say you should think carefully, leave the group and fall behind, just the 2 of you. How much danger is there? Follow us, maybe one more person can tell the intelligence tomorrow. What we need now is intelligence. As long as one person can smoothly reach the sacrificial square, test whether there is a way to leave Puxia Mountain, then we are saved. However, Lin Shuihua still wanted to say something, but was shot by Lang Jishan's icy cold gaze, scared to the point that she did not dare to continue talking for a moment. Although that was so, but Qiu Fifan suddenly continued, really definitely can leave Puxia Mountain from the sacrificial square? Whether Lan Dongmei will succeed or not, also do not know. In the end, the novel only said that she almost saw the outside of the mountain border. In the blink of an eye she and her son ran away. The novel ended. No one knows whether she was killed by a ghost later on. Of course, I admit that she really rarely encountered ghosts during that period of her life. I think, the author is not a heartless person. Tin Dan's words are a bit unexpected. In the novel, the mother-son relationship between Lam Dong Mai and Tin Hui is described many times in detail. The description is really sincere and touching, showing that the author is clearly an emotional person. If it is like this, he might leave a way for the mother and son at the end. Feelings? Lang Tri Tien, on the contrary, did not think about that aspect. Thinking carefully, there are actually quite a few passages in the novel describing such feelings. But this also cannot conclude that the author will not design a tragic ending. No, it should be said that the open ending is because the author does not have the heart to describe the death of the 2 characters. This is also a kind of contradiction when writing the story. Actually, the key issue is, the part that goes beyond the plot content. Can there be ghosts or not? Is it really still under the author's control? The ending is open. In fact, it can be said that the author also does not know how the ending will develop. All in all, can only use this real world to form the foundation. Alright, Qiu Fifan finally gave in. Let's go. The range of this jungle was too large. If they circled further, they were afraid that things would get worse. Moreover, he didn't really want to separate. It wasn't like he had no choice. He really didn't want to do that. After that, the 6 people started to go deeper into the jungle. In fact, There were people who had the same thoughts as Lin Xuehua and Qiu Fifan. But they also knew that even if they didn't enter the forest, there was no safe place to go. Right now, they didn't know where to go. The red moonlight above their heads still emitted a strange light. It was very similar to what Di Tian had imagined. In the library of the Golden Domain Academy, the short novel of 100,000 words was just like that completed. After typing the last word, Di Tian felt very relieved. At that time, Di Zhan had been sitting behind him the whole time, witnessing him finish typing the entire novel. Completed. Di Tian saved the file and said, "Samsara is finally completed." Finally, is the ending open? Through the sacrificial square, a little more and we can leave this mountain. Di Zhan looked at the plot and couldn't help but say, "Actually, it can be arranged a little better, let the mother and son run away. Consider it a hope." Di Tian rubbed his shoulders and said, "Moreover, we can't leave that in. That mountain road behind the sacrificial square, can we really run away? This is the last day of samsara, if we can't escape, then that represents that. This, I don't think much about it. Let the readers think for themselves. Isn't it good to leave room for their imagination in the novel? Li Yin, I wonder how he will evaluate it. He himself writes novels, he can give more focused comments. At this time, there are only 2 or 3 people left in the library, and they are sitting quite far apart. Di Zhan and Di Tian together again checked the spelling mistakes. Di Zhan suddenly exclaimed, "I see the map of this mountain is still not very clear. There are indeed many empty places. It's like this." Di Tian smiled bitterly. The time of thinking was a bit rushed, so many places were not carefully thought out. Now that it's finished, at first glance there are indeed some rough places. In the evening, after saying goodbye to Di Zhan, Di Tian returned to his room. His roommates were all fast asleep. He turned on the computer alone, and sat down to reread his novel. This could be considered as a special mark he left in this world. Even if he had to leave this world in the future, at least the traces of him would still be preserved. Having lived in the inn for a long time, Di Tian had long prepared for the worst outcome. He didn't want to blame heaven and earth. If he did so, he would truly apologize to his sister who had been struggling to support him. For some reason, he discovered that Lam Dong Mei was actually Di Zhan to him, and Tin Hui was himself. Although Di Zhan and he were twins, only a few minutes apart, in Di Tian's heart, Di Zhan was his everything, and even more so, his entire belief. He was able to live in the inn until now, all because of Di Zhen. Although he had never said it in front of her, deep down in his heart, he loved his sister very much. In the end, what would happen to Lam Dong Mei and her mother? He flipped to the last paragraph. He moved the mouse there. Should he continue writing? It was the last day of reincarnation. If she died, Lam Dong Mei would truly end. It wasn't that he didn't write, but that he didn't dare to write. He didn't dare to dream, didn't dare to ask for anything too far. It was truly like only dreaming could bring happiness. If he could leave the inn, what could he do? Thinking of that day, Di Zhan sat on the chair feeding the pigeons. She could clearly ask herself like that, just like the future plans of ordinary people. If she were an ordinary person without all these experiences, then she would definitely live a very happy life. She would definitely be able to marry the person she loved, live a peaceful life, and then give birth to a cute baby. Di Tian knew clearly, since her parents passed away, her older sister had given up a lot for her. She knew clearly, because she had to shoulder that responsibility, she didn't even have the right to cry, and she couldn't even have a soft personality. Because behind her was only her twin brother. Di Zhan, I can't write. Di Tian's hand hovered over the keyboard, wanting to type but couldn't press. If, just let Lam Dong Mei run away like that, it would be really looking forward to it. However, this kind of looking forward to it was no different from poison to the family. If I could leave the inn, then I would finish writing the story. Thinking of this, he turned off the file and lay down on the bed. If I could leave the inn. Di Tian thought like this and then fell asleep in a daze. From beginning to end, he had no idea that a few years later, his novel would completely come true, and the plot he had written would not have the slightest error. The 6 people kept entering the woods, all of them plugging their ears tightly. Although according to the time, Lam Dong Mei heard that terrifying sound at least an hour later, they were not sure if it would happen now or later. Will they be able to reach the sacrificial square smoothly? It was already dawn now, and it was noon before Lam Dong Mai could pass through the woods before encountering that series of supernatural phenomena. There was still a long time to go, so it was difficult to predict what they would encounter. This also made the households a little uneasy. Of course, it was only dawn, but no one could guarantee that they would safely pass through the dense forest of the North Wind Mountain first. The important thing was, during this period of time, no one knew what would happen in the woods. After entering the forest, they discovered that the description in the novel was completely the same, without any difference. The trees grew close together, there were almost no gaps, and everywhere they looked, there were trees. In other words, if a ghost wanted to hide, it would be really easy. And these trees also became obstacles. If they wanted to move, they would always have to change direction, so they could only walk step by step. This place really gave people a headache. To tell the truth, because the trees were blocking the way, if there was no compass, they would have lost their way immediately. This also gave them a piece of information: the path they took might not be the same as Lan Dongmei. After all, Lan Dongmei didn't have a compass. If they continued like this, the possibility of them encountering the same thing as Lan Dongmei would be a little lower. After walking for more than half an hour, everything was still quiet. It's just that everyone has walked quite a distance, but still haven't left the woods. Moreover, the trees are blocking the view, making it impossible for everyone to see far. Who knows if they've reached the Beifeng Mountains yet? Let's rest a bit, Xing Shan suggested. After walking for such a long time, everyone is tired. For now everything is fine, it's best to conserve your energy. Everyone can eat less food, or read the novel's content carefully. Xing Shan was right. Although they were still in the woods, everyone's energy had already been depleted. If they continued walking like this, it wouldn't be a good idea. Moreover, along the way, there were people who were so scared that they ate snacks while walking, making everyone's stomachs growl loudly. Everyone sat down in a hurry. Everyone's belongings were stored in the backpacks they took from the inn. There was one very strange thing, which was that they could carry so many things in their backpacks but still felt very light. It seemed like there was nothing inside, so it was still possible to move flexibly. Since the inn provided this kind of backpack, many families when performing the blood ritual could easily bring along a lot of various items: lighting, food, clothes, medicine, weapons, and other necessities. Most of the food that people brought along was also taken from the inn. Not only was it provided for free, but it could also be compared to delicacies. There was even absolutely no harmful chemical ingredients in the food, absolutely safe to eat. It had to be said that this was quite ironic. Roland had also previously tested the food from the inn. It was discovered that not only was it absolutely harmless, but it also did not contain any additives, and it was recognized as a safe food. Tin then tore open the pizza box and stuffed it into his mouth. It was too quiet here, making everyone think whether they should say something or not, but everyone was afraid that the cursed sound would be transmitted, so they just buried their heads in eating. If we could reach the sacrificial square and leave this place, then there would be nothing better. Lang Jishan drank a mouthful of soy milk and said, "In any case, we absolutely cannot approach that canyon area. The eastern area is the canyon. That place is absolutely the most dangerous place." Lan Dongmei was also in a life-threatening situation when she got there. She was lucky enough to escape. At that time, the households were all convinced that she would die there. But she was able to survive because she was the main character. As for anyone else who ran to that canyon, death was definitely inevitable. The person began to slowly chew and swallow. Beside him, Lang Jishan was eating bread with soy milk, while observing Xing Shan's every move. The rest of the people ate like hungry tigers while rereading the novel's contents. At this time, where was Lam Dongmai? Fong Dukhien only ate a few things hastily. He also couldn't remember the plot clearly. Fortunately, the entire novel only had 100,000 words. If it was an internet novel that was 3 to 4 million words long, it would be really hopeless. Even though there were only 100,000 words, wanting to remember the whole thing was not a simple matter. End of chapter 172. Please come back tomorrow to continue reading chapter 173. Thank you and goodbye.